Well, recently Julian Assange has been in the news with the continued attempts by the US government to extradite him out of the UK and his continued attempts to not let that happen. But something has shifted recently, and I wanted to get someone who I know has been across this story in far greater detail than what I've been able to, and that is the member of the Legislative Council for New South Wales, or in New South Wales, John Ruddick. Thank you so much for coming back on the Aussie Wire.
Great to see you, Topher. Thanks for having me.
Now, this is an issue that I know is very, very close to your heart, and we can talk a bit about how that is in a minute, or why that is in a minute. But first, I'd like to get a bit of an update on where are things up to, and you noticed the change as well. This didn't escape you. What's changed recently?
Okay, so America very much has an Asia Pacific focus at the moment because, I fear there's going to be a superpower conflict in the Asia Pacific, but Australia is really important to America, increasingly important. Now, this was evidenced by the fact that they sent Caroline Kennedy, JFK's daughter, to be the ambassador. That was a message from America to Australia. Hey, Australia, you're really, really important to us. Now, Caroline Kennedy would not say anything flippantly. Now, 2 days ago, she told the Sydney Morning Herald and the other 9 papers, she says there is absolutely a possibility that the Americans would be open to a plea deal. Now, what that means is they're going to say that they can't bring a plea deal until he is actually about to be extradited from England to the US. So they're preparing that because that's close. That's going to happen. He's going to get extradited pretty soon. So the Americans have said, no, look, in Australia, it's a very much across the political spectrum who supports Assange. Lefties do, centre does, right wing does. Okay, so everyone's on board with it. There's no one marching in the street saying, lock him up. Now, so the deal would be something like this, of course. Julian, you plead guilty to, some of these charges, and we'll let you go home to a Australian jail. Now they'll say that he's got to be in jail for 5 years, maybe 30 years. And then it's a question, is he in a minimum security, maximum security, whatever. But at least he'd be in Australia. And his family and his friends and his supporters could hopefully visit him. Now, then the really difficult moral question is this, Topher. Julian Assange is a very principled person, and the question is, would he sign the plea deal, which means he officially says that he's done something wrong. Now, in history, Socrates was told in Athens when he was put on trial for free speech, they said to him, look, we'll let you off, Socrates. You just got to admit you did the wrong thing here by opening your big mouth. And Socrates says, no, I'd rather be dead. No, I'm not going to say. Now, Galileo, 400 years ago, they gave him the same offer when he said the world's round. They said, look, we'll let you off. You just got to say you're wrong. And Galileo did say, okay, deal. I'll sign the thing saying I was wrong. Now, what's Assange going to be? I reckon he's going to be more Socrates than Galileo.
Look, I would dearly love to see him home under whatever terms are necessary for him to do that. But you mentioned a minute ago, there aren't people marching in the streets saying lock him up. But I regret to say that I was one of the people that when the whole story broke and the WikiLeaks leaking happened, and I'm one of the people that really bought the mainstream media lie, as it turns out to be at the time, that he was this incredibly dangerous man who was aiding and abetting our enemies and providing a service. He was carrying water for the terrorists, was essentially the way that I saw him at the time. But now you rightly point out there seems to be unity across the political spectrum to bring him home. What's changed? Have so many people done what I've done and made that journey and realised that actually he was right in the first place? Or is there something else at play here?
Well, look, having listened to your commentary for some time, Topher, I think you and I had a very similar trajectory on this matter. Now, immediately after 9/11, I was saying, yes, let's go for the democracy project. And I thought, look what the Americans were able to do with Japan and Germany, rebuild them, liberal democracies, pretty successful, and lots of other examples around the world. And I thought, okay, we've got these dictatorships across the Middle East. Let's go and knock them over and bring about liberal democracy. Okay, I fell for it. Now then, Afghanistan goes okay for a while, then Iraq goes to hell, and when it's really going to hell, this guy that we've never heard of, called Julian Assange, has hacked into the US military and shown the whole world some pretty appalling.
Correction. He was supplied with things. He didn't do the hacking himself. He was supplied with things.
Well, that's with the Chelsea Manning matter, but when he first came to prominence, 3 years before that. Remember, there was this in the back streets of Baghdad. There was like about 6 men walking down the street on an afternoon. American helicopters 3 or 4 kilometers away, and they're just saying, yeah, look, they look like terrorists. Let's smoke them. Boom, 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 boom.
I do, yes.
Yeah. So, and I was like you. I was thinking, look, this guy is wrecking up this guy is definitely damaging war morale. And I was pro-war at that stage. Now, my eyes were opened when the Libyan war, after Iraq's gone to hell, Afghanistan, then they go into the only success from the war on terror was Gaddafi. Gaddafi used to be a baddie. Gaddafi was trying to build a nuclear program. And after he saw that Saddam gets knocked over, he rang up Tony Blair. He said, hey, look, I've got this nuclear bomb program. Come and help me dismantle it. I don't want to be Saddam here. And Tony Blair says, deal. And they restored diplomatic relations. Western investment floods in there, and Libya was booming.
Yeah.
And the Arab Spring comes along, and the US decided, oh, well, let's go and, there's a little internal thing there with jihadis. They wrecked the joint. And all these migrants coming across the Mediterranean, their launching pad is Syria. So what a disaster that was. Libya, sorry. And so look, my view is, gee, I wish we'd heard more of Julian Assange exposing the war machine.
Yeah, that's certainly where I've come to now. So what we have now, if I'm understanding the moving parts correctly, Australia's leverage, let's say, with the US. Now, the US is an ally. We don't need leverage in the sense of an adversarial relationship. But nevertheless, Australia's importance from the US perspective as they try and shore up their geopolitical position in the Pacific is improving. And there is an opportunity here where they may actually, in a way, dangle Julian Assange as a bit of a goodwill gesture, as a bit of an olive branch to ensure that relationship remains strong. Have we heard from for example, John Shipton, Julian Assange's dad, or from his various other supporters? Are they giving any indication as to where his head might be at on this, and whether he would be a Socrates or a Galileo?
Look, it's a good question. Look, sadly, the Assange community, the pro-Assange community, is quite split. And that's very, very unfortunate under the circumstances. Look, you are right about Australia has so much leverage with the US right now. Australia has, America and Australia really go back to 1788. The reason why they started sending convicts to New South Wales is because they couldn't send them to Virginia anymore. And America has always had a very fond, soft spot for Australia, who they've sort of considered our little brother. But it's now, I think, besides World War II, I think it's now more intense than ever, that relationship. In the last sort of 7 years, there's only been about 5 state dinners at the White House for world leaders.
Yeah, right.
And Albo's going there in October. So that means there'll be about 6. 2 of them were for Australian prime ministers. Wow. This is okay. They're really, really sort of rolling out the red carpet for the Australians. Now, Albanese, being Labor left, it was the left that were originally the pro-Assange people because they were anti-war. I think Albanese and Penny Wong are sincere on this. I don't think the previous government was. I don't think they cared about Julian Assange. I think they generally thought, well, we don't care, and if anything, he's a baddie. But so look, I think Albo's trying to do his bit. Look, you asked about public opinion in this country. I'll tell you the biggest factor about why I believe it's 80% want him released. Most people just out of they do not know the complexities and the ins and outs of the Assange matter. But they just look at the situation. They say, okay, this guy's been locked up for 11 years, or being a computer hacker at worst. But everyone's just saying, well, he's already suffered, even if he's guilty.
He's done his time.
Exactly.
Yeah, he's done his time. Well, look, we're going to keep an eye on this story. Because of my background, because I was so wrong on this Julian Assange issue, I look for every chance I can now to try and be right and try and do the right thing nowadays. I guess it's a little bit of my own guilt trip trying to make sure that I make up in some small way for being so wrong on such an important issue. So we are going to stay across this story. I do hope that we can see Julian Assange at a minimum in a situation where he can see family, he can see kids, he can actually have a bit of a life and a bit of those relationships restored to him. John Ruddick MLC, thank you so much for joining us here on the Aussie Wire.
Thank you, Topher.